Two of last year's Final Four square off on Friday night, and it's one of 9 on-campus high major battles. Friday night college hoops is here, baby.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Happy Friday, and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your co-hosts. I'm Andy Patton. He is Isaac Shade, and you are joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. I want to thank all of you who have made this show your first listen or your first watch of the day, and give a special shout out to those everyday listeners and those of you hanging out with us in the Locked On College Basketball Discord channel. As a reminder, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Well, folks, we are recording this before the results of the 2 games that we previewed for Thursday: Grand Canyon, Arizona State, the return of Tyon Grant Foster, and LSU at Kansas State, and the return of Achor, I guess the debut of Achor playing for Jerome Tang and the Wildcats. So don't have any recaps on those games, but we'll get to them later in the week, and certainly the return of those 2 players, which will be key storylines.
Great news.
Season. We don't have as many marquee matchups like we did last weekend, but we have some really fun matchups, particularly here on Friday, with so many true road games. We love true road contests in the non-conference slate. We're seeing them kind of go further and further by the wayside as teams have started to realize that they're not getting as much of a benefit from the net rankings and playing those true road contests. So haven't seen as many of them, but got a tremendous slate of them on Friday. Really, really excited to get into some of these games, including teams that hold 3 of the last 8 championships. You wouldn't guess based on how those teams are playing right now. We're going to talk about those games on Saturday and some really exciting games going on Sunday. But I want to give you a little bit, or I want to have Isaac here give you a little bit of these really exciting road matchups that we got on Friday. And we're going to talk about these matchups. We're going to talk about who we think is going to win these ones, because it's a really fun day to watch some college basketball. For those of you out there who just are going to have as many screens up as possible, you're going to have plenty of opportunities.
Yes, Andy has already said it. We're going to start by talking about 9 games on Friday that all share a common thread. Here they are. Number 2, Alabama at 13, Purdue. Number 9, Arizona at Wisconsin. 21, Ohio State at, for some reason, still ranked. Number 23, Texas A&M. Number 15, Marquette at Maryland. Number 20, Florida at Florida State. SMU at Butler. Georgia at Georgia Tech. TCU at Michigan. West Virginia at Pitt. Andy, what do all of these games have in common? Well, first off, they're all on Friday. Big fans of that. We've been advocating for college football or college basketball on Friday when there's a scant amount of college football and no NFL. This is a big win. Let's own a day where it's just us instead of like the opening day being on Monday with Monday Night Football, right? Like, that's incredible. Also, all 9 of those games I just mentioned are high major teams against high major teams. Remember, in college basketball, it's not just the Power 4. We include the Big East in that. But then, Andy, to put a cherry on top, all 9 of these, as you said, are on campus. True home games for one of the 2 teams, true away games for one of them. And this is so good. The energy is so much better. And I know all the arguments people like Coach Cal was making when he set up for Kentucky to go play at Gonzaga and was like, we got to pack all our fans in. We can't do that at the Kennel. Bull crap, man. It's better when you do that. So, Andy, to wit how good this is, listen to this. In addition to the great energy actually in the building, last Friday's high major matchup, top 10 matchup, on campus game, North Carolina at Kansas, drew 1.1 million viewers per ESPN's PR. That was the 2nd most watched regular season college basketball game on ESPN2 in the last 6 years. Andy, that's a big deal. That means that's more than like all but one game from somewhere else, but bigger than all Saturdays and Sundays and midweek stuff. Number 1 on that list, Andy, it was when Arizona visited Duke last year. What's interesting about that, also on a Friday night, Also an on-campus game, also a top 12 matchup. Arizona was 12, Duke 2. That is the highest rated of these ESPN2 regular season college basketball games, Andy. So in the past 6 years, the 2 highest rated regular season college basketball games on ESPN2 have both been Friday night on-campus games. So keep it going. Coaches, you see how great this is. Coaches, you see how, like, it doesn't, like, Duke lost that game last year. It's not like they fell crazy far. North Carolina lost that game last week. They fell 1 spot in the AP poll. It's not going to hurt your resume. Make these games happen, Andy Patton.
Yep, 100% in agreement. And the funny thing, too, is looking at this, I mean, again, not all of these are ranked on ranked matchups or not all of them even feature ranked teams, but I kind of was looking through these 9 games here, and I want to talk specifically Bama at Purdue because I know that's the biggest one here out of this group, but there's 9 games here, and I kind of just looking at the lines and looking at the teams, I'm like, I only think I'm projecting 3 of the 9 home teams to win. I think there's going to be a lot of true road teams picking up victories on Friday night, which is great for those teams. Like you said, it's also not devastating for the teams that lose. And I think once teams start to feel a little bit more comfortable with that, hopefully we'll start to see more of these games because it's not a devastating thing if, for example, Purdue loses at home to Alabama. Like that's not going to, I mean, if they get crushed, it might hurt them a little bit. But I think it's going to be a close game. And I think it's a good transition to talking about this game because neither team has looked as good as I think people expected them to look. Neither team looks bad. I think that's a key part of it too, is I don't think either of these teams are frauds necessarily. I'm a little more concerned about either of them than I was at the start of the season. And I think that's what's going to make this game fun. And I think they've both played Bama's played a more challenging schedule in the sense that they've played some really good mid-major teams, but I think that this is a good opportunity for both Nate Oates and Matt Painter, 2 of the best coaches in the league, to really get a sense of what their team realistically looks like. How close are they right now to contending to get back into the Final Four, to get back to a national championship? And this is the first, again, with respect to McNeese and Arkansas State and some of the other teams that these 2 have played, this is the first really big barometer for both these squads.
Yes, Andy, that's really well said, and it's going to be great. And I think you're spot on with that observation that neither of these teams have set the world on fire. Like to me, so far, maybe some of the best individual team outings we've seen is like Auburn's win over Houston, Gonzaga's win over Baylor, and there's one more that it feels like it's somewhere in there, but I'm not pulling it out right now.
I like Ohio State over Texas.
Do what?
Ohio State over Texas is what I was thinking.
Yes. That's a good one. And I was thinking Kentucky beating Duke, right? Like, I don't think many people were giving that a shot. But, Andy, I love this because, we're seeing a lot of teams schedule home and home series now, which is what's making these things happen. But also this one is part of actually a 3-year series. They kicked it off last year in Toronto. We'll call that the Zach Edey special, where and then this year, obviously in West Lafayette, next year in Tuscaloosa. Purdue won last year 92-86. This was a bonkers game where Zach Edey and Mark Sears both dropped 35, but Braden Smith had 27. All sorts of great stuff. Really, Bama looked like they were going to win that game. Purdue controlled it down the stretch. But Andy, like how cool, as you said a little bit ago, we get 2 of last year's Final Four participants in this game. Obviously, they both got knocked off by UConn, Purdue in the semifinal, and then Purdue in the championship game. But man, this is so good to get Matt Painter and Nate Oates, who, not only are these 2 of the greatest programs right now, these are 2 of the greatest coaches going right now, Andy. And
2 of the best guards in the country, too.
My word, absolutely. Braden Smith against Mark Sears, both a little undersized guards, but both phenomenal guards who do it a little bit differently. Obviously, Braden Smith scores a ton, but he's more of a pure facilitator than is Mark Sears. We'll get to see, like, how does Trey Kaufman-Wren stack up against Cliff Amori and things like that? Going to be a lot of fun. Purdue's got a 29-game home non-con win streak on the line, Andy, as well. So really, really interesting there. Very quickly, Andy, on any of these other 8 games, what stands out to you?
I think, Arizona at Wisconsin's an incredibly exciting game, and I'm really interested to see Wisconsin stack up against a team of that caliber, as they've looked really good so far, but haven't faced a lot of super strong competition. That's true of the majority of teams in college basketball up to this point, and that's why I think a lot of these matchups are going to give us a first glimpse at some of those teams. But I'll quickly actually shout out Marquette at Maryland. I'm very interested in this game for a lot of reasons. For those of you who listened to Thursday's episode of the show, I talked a little bit about Marquette, and I'm concerned about their lack of rebounding. playing. I'm concerned about their lack of interior offense. This is a team that's shooting way more three-pointers than two-pointers. I think they're like 340th in the country in two-point attempts per game and 13th in the country in three-point attempts. And so far, the threes have not been falling. And if that continues to be a problem for Shaka Smart's team, this game could be a significant trap for them as a ranked team going on the road to take on an unranked team. Meanwhile, Maryland has a freshman who gobbles up rebounds at an elite clip in Derek Queen. And if he can be that impactful, I could see him getting 15, 18 rebounds in this game against a ranked team. And while Marquette doesn't have a lot of interior presences, I'll tell you right now, if Derek Queen grabs 18 boards against Marquette, he's going to shoot up draft boards and get a ton of attention. And that's my prediction. Not only that Derek Queen has a monster game, but Maryland is going to beat Marquette in this one, pick up a big win for the Terps. And we're going to start to have even more questions about Shaka Smart's team.
And the question is, can Cam Jones be the best player on the floor and maybe send Marquette on to victory? Andy, I also love that as part, like a third of these games are like big time rivalry games. We get Florida at Florida State, we get Georgia at Georgia Tech, and we get some backyard brawl action with West Virginia and Pitt. So that'll be a lot of fun. But the game I'm most intrigued by outside of the Big Daddy is Ohio State and Texas A&M. Because I think, Andy, you and I are both a little bit lower on Texas A&M maybe than a lot of people are. And I'm also more intrigued and think Ohio State has a lot of great pieces than a lot of people do. And so can Ohio State, who's bringing together a lot of new pieces for Coach Diebler, head down to College Station and take work? That game, man, I'm very, very intrigued by. So we'll keep our eyes out for that. Andy, you mentioned it earlier. Virginia and Villanova are the owners of 3 of the last 8 national championships, but neither of these teams is anywhere close to making it 4 out of 9. We are not in danger of that at all. But they're squaring off this weekend. We're going to look at that and a couple other of our Friday and Saturday games coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Peyton Manning's favorite ad sponsor on the Locked On Network, Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip all that holiday hustle, man, and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code college. Andy, so many great deals in this. This is crazy. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.89. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, again, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code college and a $30 reward card when you shop early. Andy, my family, I think we're going to do steak instead of turkey for Thanksgiving. I might have to get in on this, man. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code college. Minimum purchase may apply. All right, Andy, I'm going to run us through 8 other games that 5 of these are Friday, 3 of them are Saturday, and then I want you to take your pick of the litter and tell me why it's the game you have your eyes on most. Here's this Friday slate. I said 8. It's actually 7. I lied. 4 Friday games. Temple at Boston College, another true road game. We didn't include that in the last one because Temple's in the A-10. There you go. That's Friday night, 7 ESPN+. Virginia at Villanova, the game we teased. That's at 5 p.m. An earlier tip on TNT. Maybe is that leading into an NBA game? Maybe because I think
it's leading into that Penn State Virginia Tech game. Spoiler alert for those of you listening. Of course
it is, Andy. Yes, except that's going to be on Peacock, not on TNT. So that's what
weird.
Yeah. But anyway, those games are both part of a series there together, the Hall of Fame series. And then we got Wazoo versus Iowa. Andy, that's at 8:30 on Big Ten Network. That one's what, in Illinois? Is that what we said?
Yeah, somewhere? It's in Illinois.
Yeah, so crazy stuff. And then on Saturday, 3 games we got our eyes on. South Carolina at Indiana. It's South Carolina's one other game against a high major opponent outside of Battle for Atlantis. Remember, we're hard on Indiana's non-con schedule. No bueno. That's Saturday afternoon on Peacock at 3 Eastern. Wake Forest at Xavier, Saturday at noon tip on FS1. So for those of you who don't care about college football yet, man, that's a great game. And then Notre Dame at Georgetown, Saturday, 1 p.m. on NBC. Man, I love getting these games on fun networks. Andy, out of that set of 7, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I think you got to start with the game between Villanova and Virginia. You know, it's got intrigue in kind of like a car crash type of way where you don't want to take your eyes off of it, even though it's not exactly two programs in a great spot right now.
You're making me spit my drink out. I just took a drink, Andy. Come on, man. What are you doing to me here?
I mean, it's true. Like, look, you're right. 3 of the last 8 championships have been won by these two programs, but not these two coaches. And obviously for Virginia, that's a very recent change with Tony Bennett's decision to retire just about 3 weeks before the start of the season. For Villanova, we're of course in the 3rd year of the Kyle Neptune era, and if you are a everyday listener, you have heard frequent conversations about Kyle Neptune's job status and security going forward, as this Villanova team is 2-2 on the year, is not defending really anybody, and outside of Eric Dixon is having a lot of challenges offensively. I'm very interested to see how this game goes. I'm interested to see if Kyle Neptune can rally the troops and get this Villanova team to pick up what would be a really quality non-conference win and kind of quiet some of the conversation around him, or if he's unable to do so, if Villanova can pick up, or excuse me, if Virginia can pick up a little momentum. This is a roster that we really like, and they do not have Jalen Warley, who, as an aside, will actually be visiting Iowa State and Gonzaga in the next week or so, as he determines where he wants to go for what I'm assuming will be a mid-season transfer sit out for the second half and then play the following year. But without Jalen Warley for Virginia, they're going to be a little bit more challenged this year, but I like Elijah Saunders. TJ Power, if he can kind of find it, I think could be a really nice piece for them. So it'll be really interesting to see if Virginia can kind of pick up their first marquee win of the non-conference, and if what that would potentially do for Kyle Neptune's team. But I think this is definitely the game to keep our eyes on, even if neither team has looked exceptionally good in the early part of the season.
FanDuel favors Villanova by 3.5. Andy, like, do you see any world where if Villanova loses this game, like we're having real serious conversations about a midseason change? Or do you think regardless, like maybe even regardless of this game, like is there a world where Villanova pulls the plug midseason, or do you think Kyle Neptune gets the year?
I think Kyle Neptune gets the year, but I know looking at their non-conference schedule after this game, they have Penn, and then they have, I think, one other mid-major team that's not in the top 200, but the rest of a lot of really good teams. They play Maryland, they play Cincinnati. I think they play Pitt is their other game. So like they might lose all of those games, and that's not going to look good. It's going to be really frustrating for Villanova fans. But unless they drop some really hideous games, which they just don't have that many left on the schedule, I think he probably holds on to his job. I also don't see Villanova getting beat really badly by Virginia, just by the nature of how Virginia plays basketball. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. So I think that it's like if you lose a close game to Virginia, you're probably feeling okay about that, at least better than you do about the other 2 losses that they have. But yeah, I think most likely Neptune keeps his job until March, and I don't think he'll have it after that.
Okay. Andy, the game I'm watching for out of this set is Wake Forest at Xavier. Both of these are intriguing, like kind of just past tier 1 respectively in the ACC and Big East. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people have been like, all right, in the ACC, it's Duke and Carolina, and then we're not sure, but a lot of people think that Wake is right there. In the Big East, a lot of people, it's like UConn and then Creighton and Marquette, but we think Xavier's kind of right there too. And it's interesting that both of these programs are in that spot this year. And then I think this game is going to go a long way toward helping us start to determine more about each of these squads. They both come into the game undefeated. Xavier's 3-0. Excuse me, folks, but really hasn't played anybody. Texas Southern, IU, Indy, which why did Ooey Pooey change their name to that? I'm so frustrated. And Jackson State. So it's like, yeah, whatever, that's fine. Wake has had a couple throwaways with Coppin State, NCAA, and USC Upstate, but that nice win over Michigan last Sunday, that's got legs. But with Wake, Andy, they've not really been dominating team, right? Like all these close games, and I think we need to see more out of Wake. And KenPom has, we don't have the FanDuel line for this yet because it's a Saturday game, but KenPom has this game Xavier -7, dude. Like that is kind of wild to me. So I like that in that Michigan win. I think it's going to have some legs for Wake, but we need to see more here from them if they're going to do it. Going to be hard going into that Xavier environment, true home environment for the Musketeers. Also, Andy, I've played music in that arena, and I left some good juju in there for everyone who comes. So you know, like that's a thing as well. But you know, Wake, we got the news that Omaha Billieu, the sophomore transferred from Iowa State, who, you know, we thought he was going to be Iowa State's big freshman last year. It wasn't. It was Momcilovic. I was really hopeful he'd have a big sophomore breakout for the Deacs, but unfortunately is out 8 to 10 weeks with a foot injury. So that's a bummer for this team, but we'll see what's going there. But Andy, that's the game of this group that I've really got my eyes on. Any others that you want to just hit before we move along?
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see Wazoo against Iowa. I think that'll be an interesting game, just in the sense of Wazoo is a team that replaced basically everybody. I think they have one returning scholarship player from last year's roster. They have a new coach in David Riley, who comes up from Eastern Washington. He brings a handful of really talented players with him from that team in the Big Sky. Cedric Coward is an NBA prospect. Luwan Watts, Dane Erickstrup. That's a really good team. And they go take on Iowa. Again, this game's in Illinois, so it's a kind of a more of a home environment for the Hawkeyes than it is for the Cougars. But a nice chance for Wazoo to pick up a win for the WCC, which still feels.
I was going to say WCC powerhouse Wazoo.
Yep, WCC versus Big Ten. You know, that's what you think of when you think of Wazoo taking on Iowa. But no, I think Iowa's favored in this game, and I think they should probably be favored, but I would not be surprised just because of how difficult it is to scout a Wazoo team that is a pretty new look roster and has only played a few not very good teams up to this point. So I think this could be a bit of a trap game as it is for Iowa State.
Andy, one quick thing before you move on. The other thing, not the game itself doesn't intrigue me all that much, but how about Temple being favored at Boston College by 1.5 on FanDuel? That's crazy to me and is not good news for the Boston College Eagles. So yikes. We'll see what happens there. Yeah,
Earl Grant, we'll see if he's one of the coaches on the coaching carousel this offseason. It's been a bit of a rough start for that BC team. But Isaac, there's a big opportunity on Sunday for 3 West Coast mid-major teams to pick up pretty significant victories over high-major opponents. And the funny thing is, 2 of those mid-majors, they're actually favored in those games. We're going to talk about that and a few other contests on Sunday coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. And the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Looking ahead to Feast Week, the battle for Atlantis. Odds to win that championship are out on FanDuel right now. Gonzaga leads the pack at +135. Followed by Tommy Lloyd and Arizona at +180. Indiana is at +600, and Pat Kelsey and Louisville, they were a little higher before their loss to Tennessee, but they are still at +1,000 to potentially take that home as well. If you like those odds, you like any of the other game odds as they start to come out for the games that we're about to talk about, visit FanDuel.com and join today. As a reminder, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Isaac, 5 fun games we want to talk about that are taking place on Sunday. The first one is one of the more intriguing matchups, just purely from a storyline perspective of the non-conference. That is New Mexico at St. John's, the 22nd ranked Johnnies. And at first glance, New Mexico going on the road to take on St. John's maybe doesn't sound that appealing, but this is Richard.
It does to me, Andy. It does to me. I'm excited about
well, I mean, you know what? Mountain West going on the road, taking on a Big East team. I guess you like it either way, but certainly the added intrigue in this matchup is Richard Pitino, New Mexico's head coach, taking on his father, Rick Pitino, the head coach at St. John's. This game will be at the Madison Square Garden at noon Eastern on Sunday on FS1. Ken Pom has the Johnnies by 9. Speaking of Mountain West teams taking on high major opponents, this one is going the other direction as Clemson goes across the country to take on Boise State in Idaho Sunday at 1:30 on CBS Sports Network. Ken Pom favors the Broncos in that one by 2. And then we got what is a non-conference game between Cal and USC as Cal heads down to Southern California to take on the Trojans Sunday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time on the Big Ten Network. Ken Pom favors the Trojans by 11. In that one, our third mid-major versus high-major game here is St. Mary's going to play Nebraska at the Sanford Pentagon in South Dakota, 1 p.m. on Sunday on the Big Ten Network. Ken Pom has the Gales by 4. And then last but not least, Utah taking on Mississippi State on Sunday at 4 p.m. on ESPN2. Ken Pom favors the Bulldogs in that one by 6. Isaac, are there any specific games here that you want to touch on while we kind of look at this slate?
No, I hate them all. Also, I'm very mad at you for not saying what I put in our notes. Cowbells -6, Andy.
Cowbells -6.
All of Mississippi State fans are mad at you now for not leaning it. No, I'm just kidding. Andy, also, here's something funny to me. Were it not for COVID, do you think anyone would know what the Sanford Pentagon was and where it is?
No, honestly, I feel
like that place has just had a glow up, all thanks to COVID. You know what I mean? Anyway. Yeah, Andy, I like multiple of these games, like the hilarity of that classic ACC Big Ten matchup between Cal at USC, man. I mean, that's just, it's just so funny. But look, yes, clearly New Mexico at St. John's. New Mexico loses JT Toppin to Texas Tech, and yet they still seem to be humming right along. Why? Thanks to Donovan Dent, who we've been talking, man, just you and Leaf and I were texting about earlier this week. Just what a ridiculous kind of start to the season he has. But Nelly Jr. Joseph has been playing really well for Richard Pitino's club. I know it's going to be tough to go up to MSG, as we always say, the world's most famous arena, and knock off St. John's. Folks, keep in mind, MSG is a home arena for St. John's. And Rick Pitino's got this team playing really, really well. They're ranked, bringing guys along. And so I'm very intrigued. I was surprised, though. Like, I figured St. John's would be favored, but not by 9. I'm curious to see what the actual FanDuel line is when that comes out, if it's that steep. You think it will be or no?
No, I don't. And part of it is because St. John's they've looked fine. Like, their margin of victories have been pretty good, but if you watch the first half of pretty much all their games this year, they've kind of shown some weaknesses. They kind of figured out in the second half of those games, and I think that Pitino's still kind of Rick Pitino, I should say, is still kind of trying to put it all together and figure it out with the group that he has. The shooting is still a bit of a question mark, so I wouldn't be surprised. The New Mexico team that seems a little bit more polished right now than St. John's. I think St. John's has a bit more talent, just a bit more athleticism, but I think New Mexico looks a bit more polished, and I think that that's going to be a pretty close game. I think that these two, every coach wants to win every game, don't get me wrong, but man, these two coaches both want to win this one so bad, and I think that's going to make it a really, really fun game that we're going to see on Sunday. This is the must-watch game of the day. Even if I like this entire slate, that's the one you got to watch. That's going to be so much fun. You
know what's wild, Andy? Kaderi Richmond right now is the 6th leading scorer for St. John's. Would not have called that one going into the season.
Yeah, he didn't look good in their last game at all until the second half. He was struggling.
And Brady Dunlap, who was kind of an afterthought, like was a late kind of ad for them ahead of last year, is shooting 57.1% from 3 on 4.7 attempts a game. Obviously small sample size, but Andy, 8 of 14. That's pretty wild. Good stuff there. And so we'll keep our eyes on that. But Andy, outside of that, what is the key game you're watching for other than this guy?
I'm really intrigued by St. Mary's taking on Nebraska, too, as a true neutral site game for that one. I think Nebraska's a team that I'm just kind of curious to see how some of these pieces are going to come together for them. A lot of transfers, a lot of new pieces for them in that backcourt with Raleigh Wooster, with Connor Esigian, how those guys kind of look playing against a really good, stout defensive team in St. Mary's, and a team that a lot of the attention on the Gales has been about the players they lost, notably Joshua Jefferson going to Iowa State, and of course, Aiden Mahaney going to UConn. But this is also a team that returns a bunch of key pieces. The WCC Player of the Year, and Augustus Marcelonis is back. Mitchell Saxon, the WCC Defensive Player of the Year, a 5th-year senior, he's back. In the front court, a 7-foot rim protector for them. So they have those two key pieces back. Paulus Morauskas, the transfer from Arizona, has been incredible. He's been a double-double machine. I believe he's gotten a double-double in every game for St. Mary's this year. I think in his last game, he was like 18 and 15. Like, he's a really, really good replacement for Jefferson, for Randy Bennett and the Gales. This is going to be a really good game, a really nice test for St. Mary's, a really good opportunity for those guys at Nebraska to kind of face a really good quality opponent. I'm also very intrigued by Berke Bayok-Tunsel, who is the UCLA transfer, who hasn't done a ton yet for Nebraska, but I think is going to be a really nice player for them. And I think this is maybe an opportunity for him to showcase some of the skills he has as a 6'9" player who can kind of shoot the three and pull players away from the rim. I think it'll be really interesting to see how he performs in this game.
Andy, I'm really excited also about Clemson, as you talked about going out west to Boise State. Like, that was really cool for an ACC school to go out and play a true road game at a Mountain West school. So well done, Brad Brownell. Look, Clemson really intrigues me. I'm curious to see what they can do following up last year where they lose PJ Hall. Chase Hunter's leading the way right now with 16 points a game. The chef is cooking, averaging a double-double early in the season. But Jaden Zachary comes over from Boston College. He's one of their few bright spots. And this is really interesting. Ken Palm favors it, Boise State, by 3 right now. But don't let this game that's on CBS Sports Network get away from you at 1:30 Eastern on Sunday as you're starting to tune into football. Going to be a really, really intriguing game out there while they eat some potatoes.
I'll just add one thing very quickly on that game in particular. I think, excuse me, one of the things that really interests me about—
It's got you choked up, Andy. I get it, man. That's fine.
I mean, honestly, it's Clemson putting their money where their mouth is, because Brad Brownell really talked a big game about the Big 12 and how they game the system, and they always play all these, not very difficult non-conference schedules. And for him to be actually, say, look, here's me going on the road, playing a mid-major team. Yes, it's a good mid-major team, a top 50 team in the Ken Palm and things like that. But I'm going to go travel across the country and go play a tough game because I think it makes my team better. And if you're a Big 12 coach who wants to kind of clap back at him for his comments, he's proven it. He's proven it by being willing to play this game. So major shout out to Brad Brownell for playing this game.
Yeah, that's true. Because this is going to be like when the net rankings start coming out. This is going to be a quad 1 game. Like right now, Boise State is 41st at Ken Palm. I was trying to look to see where they are. I hadn't got it yet at Torvik. Stay with me. Sorry. They're 54th at Torvik. Clemson's 40th. I mean, so these teams are very close, both at Torvik and Ken Palm, Andy. And so
this feels like a win-win for Clemson. Even if they lose this game, it's not going to hurt them that much. I'm glad I'm glad he's doing it.
Oh man, good stuff. So as you said, Andy, really curious to see how these 3 kind of mid-major West Coast teams do. I know we're over a little bit here, Andy, but how do you think New Mexico, Boise State, and St. Mary's all fare? 0-3 to 3-0. Where are you at?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to say 2-1. And I guess if I had to pick, I'd say St. Mary's and Boise State win and New Mexico loses. But honestly, I could see it going literally any direction. I don't think it'll be 3-0 or 0-3. I think 3-0 is probably the least likely outcome. But I wouldn't be surprised if they go 2-1 at all. I think there's a really good group of teams and pretty evenly matched games as well.
Yep, I agree. And that's, again, what we love about these games, man. Way to go to all these teams. Going to be lots of fun, Andy. You guys, hope you're ready and primed for another great weekend of basketball. Who cares about all the football stuff going on, man? That ball doesn't even make sense. You can't bounce it. It goes everywhere. This ball's reliably coming right back to you, and that's why we love it. You guys, if you haven't subscribed to the show on video and audio, make sure you do that right now so you don't miss a second of Locked On College Basketball, where we're coming at you all the time, 5 days a week, and even sometimes on the weekend when stuff gets crazy. If you haven't joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord, man, we're having great conversations in there all the time. It's a super fun place where fans spouting off about their team, and I just absolutely love it. The link is in the show notes, and it's free to join. As always, apology to the lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats. Who do we got? Some Villanova today. We got some, there was somebody else I was thinking about, but we had lots of Wildcats, lots of fun. We'll be right back with you on Monday to unpack all this stuff we just talked about. But until then, peace.